Good evening, ladies and gentlemen, and welcome to the Buffaloes podcast for episode 17. I'm your host, Graham, the G Show Forsyth. Buffaloes Nation, Buffaloes podcast is brought to you by Mid-Canada Fasteners and Tools, your one-stop shop for all your industrial needs. Be sure to visit their store locations in Brandon and Winnipeg today, as well as checking out their website at midcanadafasteners.shop. Terrico, serving Manitoba producers for over 80 years. Visit their website to learn more about their brand at terrico.ca, and two goaltenders, Gordie Tumilson's brand, of course, your goalie's personal video review service. Visit their website, GordieTumilsonGoalies.ca, for more information. Thank you to Gordie, as well as Mid-Canada Fasteners and Tools and Goaltenders for supporting G-Show Productions and Pilot Mound Hockey Academy here on the network as the official sponsors of this podcast. And yeah, as for the teams around the academy, they've been in action. They got some more action ahead of them. We'll show you the schedules right now. For the male U15 team, they've had a chance to play twice today. They'll play twice tomorrow, and then TBD, to be determined if they're playing on Sunday. And their weekend in Thunder Bay, Ontario. Moving on to the U17s, they played back on Wednesday, where it was one heck of a game. We'll show you some highlights from that one after our only guest of this episode joins us, but they'll be playing against the Rink Hockey Academy Winnipeg team again on Sunday afternoon, this time on the road at the Rink Training Center in Winnipeg, Manitoba. And for the female team, they're playing tonight against the Rink Hockey Academy Winnipeg team in a game that is pretty much concluded at this point. We will most likely have results for you coming up in this episode, but if not, check out PM Buffaloes on X, formerly known as Twitter, for more information on how that one went down. And the female Buffaloes only game of the weekend, coming on to talk about that game, as well as their past matchup against St. Mary's Academy, is Gordie Tumilson, as well as talking about the rest of the teams in the academy. You're not going to want to miss it. It's coming up next with the ex-Winnipeg Jet 1.0 WHA goaltender, now goaltending coach, marketing director, and head of recruiting at Pilot Mound Hockey Academy, Gordie Tumilson, joining the show on his weekly appearance, coming up next on the Buffaloes podcast, episode 17. Gordie Tumilson, the weekly guest here on the Buffaloes podcast, here to talk about the past weekend of games and the upcoming weekend of games for the teams in the academy, as playoffs right around the corner. Gordie, starting on March 4th, which is crazy. We're almost at that time. But for the U15 Buffaloes, they've had a chance to play teams in terms of Prairie Hockey Academy, OHA Edmonton, the Notre Dame Hounds, most recently the Adena Hornets, and this afternoon the Minnetonka Skippers. So some different teams there on the road in Alberta and Ontario in the past little bit. Talk about how things have been going for this U15 group.
It's been a bit of a tough week for the U15 guys. They lost their first two today, an early morning game, and then this afternoon again. This is a tough weekend for them. They get 5 games in 3 days, or actually, yeah, 3 days. So it's a busy weekend for them. But they're young guys. They recover pretty quickly. So we expect them to be pretty good again tomorrow. They've been playing well. Just the other teams are really good. These two American teams they played today are were really good and good and big guys too. I mean, the U15 guys, you look at them, they're all 6 foot tall. My gosh. So you're kind of wondering if they're really that age, but I guess so. And so you kind of, but our guys are. It's a great experience down in Thunder Bay. They enjoyed the trip down there. They enjoy playing down in that tournament rink, and so that all works out nicely. What else is there? As far as the games last weekend, yeah, they had a bit of a tough weekend last weekend, but they're resilient young guys, and they're just battling away to do what they do. So we'll just let them. I'm just clicking around here to make sure I know exactly what went on
Yeah.
for them last week. But yeah, they're continuing to get ready for playoffs, and they're looking forward to going to Penticton in a couple of weeks to play in their games there.
Yeah, and of course for this U15 team, they ended up losing a close one to the Hounds. Tough won, earlier today against the teams they've been playing so far in terms of coming from the States in Thunder Bay. For this U15 team playing two more games in Thunder Bay tomorrow against the Hermantown Hawks and the Grand Rapids Thunderhawks. Gordie, for this team, getting a chance to play, non-CSSHL competition. We know the U18 male program has had a chance to do that quite a bit this season, but for this U15 group, once again, getting more eyes on them from around different places from the hockey world. How huge is that?
Oh, and that is really the essence of the program is to develop an individual player for his next level, her next level. And so again, the winning and losing becomes kind of well, it's always important. As we've said many times, it's not the most important thing that we do. It's getting our players to be better and then showcasing them, which is exactly what these things are called, showcases, so that folks in positions to select these players down the road into junior hockey or college hockey get a chance to see them play in very competitive situations, see how they react, and so it's a moving forward opportunity for all the kids, and that's why we feel bad when they don't sort of play up to their own personal best standard. If they slump their shoulders and they don't feel good and they don't they the losing bothers them, that doesn't augur well for their futures in some teams because coaches and general managers watch body language, and body language is a huge thing. And if guys are moping, guess what? They're not being picked. And if guys are still pissing vinegar and giving it as hard as they can, then they're going to get a chance to play up when the time comes.
Yeah, and certainly players that have been really showing off this season for this U15 group. We've mentioned them before, Gordie, but Forrest Carlson, 70 points in 49 games played this season. Cole Landerville and Gavin Noseworthy behind him, all over point per game. The only three on that team over point per game. But of course, the rest of this team continuing to get better no matter what the scores are as the season goes along. Two more games for them in Thunder Bay coming up this weekend until they look ahead to their action to close out play until the CSSHL playoffs. But Gordie, got to talk about the U17s. Most recently playing in a game on Wednesday against the Rink Hockey Academy, where it was Aiden Jacobson for the Rink and Carson Carroll's dueling hat tricks, both of them recording that. It was a fun game to watch in terms of seeing the highlights and seeing those two go at it. Pretty huge for the Academy, though, getting that type of recognition, with the performance of Carroll's and getting as many eyes as guys did, I'm sure, on that game. How huge was that one? Being able to see those two go at it.
Well, it was a competitive game, and two guys kind of shone. And of course, our Carson Carls is our guy, and he loaded it up and gave her all he's got. He does get a lot of support. They those guys pass the puck around an awful lot. He gets himself into positions where he's open. He is a devastatingly hard shot for a young guy. I mean, he's a big, powerful kid, and he's really sort of grown as a player and whatnot. And give all credit to the Rink Academies Jacobson. He played really well as well, and they came ahead by one. So good on the. It was a good game. It was a really good game, back and forth. We were up 3-0, I think, at one time, and all of a sudden we weren't. So good on the Rink to fight back, and both teams battled right to the end of the game. I think it was a deflection from in front of the goal about with a minute and a half to go that was the winning goal for the Rink, and it was a clean goal, good play, and good on their team to win on the road.
The Ring being a top 10 team, this U17 Buffaloes group, of course, has once been top 10 before, but has slid down the standings to 20th out of 33 teams in the U17 division. But to be up 3-0 against a top 10 team, I mean, that's got to be a huge positive in itself, I'm sure. Coach McConnell just wishing that his group was able to put it away. But I guess got to take your moral victories where you can, and that being one of them. Just looking for a bit more finish at this point, being the biggest thing for this U17 squad.
Well, yeah, I mean, first of all, moral victory, sure. I mean, when you're 20th and you're playing against number 10 or 9 or 8 or whatever they are, good on us to be that close and be ahead. And if we could keep up the pace and play a little bit stronger defensively, I think obviously we're going to do that. And that's what the kids are learning to do. They're learning to be better defensively. So whereas we might have lost this game in the start of the year 9-5 or 9-4, 9-2, we lost 5-4. So those are the victories that you get. You get closer, you get better, and you challenge the other teams harder. And you as an individual player play better. And the people that again are going to pick you for their team next year or down the road notice you and want to keep an eye on you and want you to come and play for them sometime when the time is right.
Yeah, and I mean for this U17 team, Gordie, this is a team that has been having some pretty good success recently in terms of the scoreboard. Even though wins aren't everything, showing pretty well against Delta, winning 7-0 against them, 1-0 against Prairie, then losing in two close ones back to back. They'll be playing against Rink Hockey Academy, Winnipeg again, coming up this Sunday. And then back-to-back games against Notre Dame at Blackjack Stewart Arena to finish off their CSSHL schedule. But yeah, very optimistic to see that. To see this group, it seems like playing some of their best hockey at the right time heading into playoffs.
Yeah, it's good to see. I mean, Rick and Danny Carls have done a great job of getting their team prepared, and they work very hard with the kids that come up here to play, and it's a full season of learning, and there's another 3 months after the playoffs are over that the kids will continue to learn and get better with their individual skills, and so that job is not done until the end of May, but right now we're preparing for the playoffs, as you said. And they're playing at a pretty high level right now, so good on them, and hopefully we can carry that forward to Penticton in a couple of weeks.
Well, yeah, and of course Carson Carroll's being a key contributor on this year's team, but a lot of the players on the U17 group really been pulling their weight as the season goes along to come together and make a pretty successful season in terms of Pilot Mound standards for what's happened with that team in particular in the last few years. Great to see them having some success again. Gordie, we're going to talk about the U18 programs, two of them, the male and female side of things, coming up next after this quick break. You're watching the Buffaloes podcast with Gordie Tumilson, the ex-Winnipeg Jet 1.0 WHA goaltender, and now doing some great stuff for Pilot Mound. Stick with him and me for more after this break. Welcome back to the Buffaloes podcast with Gordie Tumilson. Gordie, we've talked about the U15s, U17s. Now we're going to be talking about the U18s, and this group, the past games that they've played coming against Rink Hockey Academy, Winnipeg, and Southern Alberta Hockey Academy. Actually, I had a chance to talk about these a bit on the podcast this past week that we ended up airing on Sunday, actually, due to all the technical difficulties we had. But yeah, the U18s losing pretty decisively in both. It's been a rough season as things have gone along in terms of what the scores have looked like for this U18 team. But were there any sort of moral victories that they came away from this weekend with?
Sure. I mean, they're in competition. They're being showcased to lots of people, and you know, every season, one team wins in every league, right? Every league has one winner, and everybody else doesn't win. Now, some of the teams win games and they get to the semifinals and the quarterfinals, and some teams don't make the playoffs. But on those teams are good players. Even though you don't make the playoffs, we've got good players, and those players get to showcase themselves. And the interesting thing is the scouts recognize that. Scouts don't need to see a team win a championship to know that the players are good. scouts and general managers and coaches, good hockey people, know what a good player looks like. And so all they're looking for is good players. I mean, they're not the only people that are worried about winning and losing are the players on the team, coaching staff, the ownership, of course, and the team and the parents. Beyond that, that's the big need for them is to win games. The rest of the world is looking for the players to emerge as quality players to move up to the next level. And again, we talk about this all the time, and it's not an excuse for poor play. It's a reality. Some teams have better players. You can't do anything about that for whatever the circumstances are. But it's incumbent upon the players that are playing on the lesser teams to work hard and showcase themselves in amongst a game situation and get selected to go up to the next level. And there's never been a full team ever go from one level to the next level. I can assure you that. Maybe some of the players do, but no full teams do. So winning and losing is a nice thing, quickly forgotten if you don't make the next level. You're out and somebody else is in. So that's what's important.
Yeah, and just taking a look at these games in more context, the Buffaloes held the Rink Hockey Academy team to about 54 shots, 74 shots given up against Southern Hockey, Alberta uh, Hockey Academy. But yeah, I guess a more victory from the Buffaloes would be only down 1-0 after the first, after giving up 23 shots and getting outshot, only putting up 4 against SAHA. And then, yeah, just taking a look at that game against RHA. I guess having a better third period compared to the rest, only allowing 2 to the 8 combined they gave up before, and keeping it closer in shots, 16-12, only for the Rink Hockey Academy in the first period of that game. I guess, yeah, I mean, yeah, you're right. You always mention it all the time, and it's so true about the scouts. They don't look at winning and losing as much, more so the player out there. What about the players from this year's Buffaloes team? Because I haven't really had a chance to see them, Gordie, but do we see that consistent effort every single game, like these players are playing like they want the scouts to notice them at the very least?
I'm going to say that about half of the players play in a very as high level as they're capable of.
Right.
And then and that changes, of course, from week to week. So you're not getting the consistency amongst the same guys every week, but they show enough to be recognized and watched. And I think just about everyone has gotten an offer to go to tryouts and to junior hockey, and then we've got a couple of players, and half a dozen players that are being courted to move on to junior hockey when when the time is right for them. So I mean, it'll be at the end of the season, of course, and next year, hopefully, once they graduate grade 12. So anybody who's graduating grade 12 is looking forward to some kind of reasonable opportunity at the junior A or junior B level to continue their hockey career.
Yeah, and players that are going to be moving on this season. So many from this team, including Calix Monkman, team captain, a player that the Buffaloes looking like they also won't be getting Austin Polanowski back next season. So going to be losing some good players from this team, Gordy, but going to be exciting to also see what this group of 2005 graduating players in 2006 2026 2025 graduating players can do. But for the U18 female group, 40. They ended up playing St. Mary's Academy only one game last week on the Friday and lost to them by a score of 3-1. Close in the score for this Buffaloes team, a team where they played pretty tough all season long in St. Mary's. Another positive for this team, knowing that even though they're not quite there yet, they're that much closer to once again coming close to at least tying the St. Mary's team.
Yeah, we've played the same areas a bunch of times, and of course they're close to us, and that's always a good thing when we have some rivalries and we don't have to travel a million miles to go play a hockey game. And again, I mentioned Balmoral Hall is joining us in our league next year too, so that'll be a bonus for travel at least. But yeah, our team puts up a good fight, and I'm the goalie guy, so and with Colin Paffera now, two of us working, and Brian Archibald out of Killarney gives us a good hand once in a while. So we're really proud of our goalies. Sometimes the scores are close because the goalies keep it there, and they continue to battle right from game start to game end, and this was the case again. With our goalkeeper Alex Mills from Colorado, just outside of Denver. Coming up and playing a really strong game for us, and she made 45 saves or something like that, and so that was a good effort on her part. The defense on all of our teams is getting better. The defensive game is getting better, and it needs to be because some of these powerful Western Manitoba or Western Canadian teams are just awesome, talent wise, and so defensively we need to be really strong, all five members plus the goalie, and we're getting a lot more of that as the season comes to a close.
Yeah, and I mean, just looking into this game, it was a bit of a rough first period as we saw 13-2 win shots, 1-0 St. Mary's Academy, 21-4 in shots in that second period for them, and they come away with 2 goals. But the third period is where things seemed like they came all together for this Buffalo's team. Gordie only outshot 10-7 and ended up getting the lone goal in that period, scored by let's see her name, Shay Siemens, scoring the lone goal for the Buffaloes in that game. So I guess that never quit attitude, seeing this team bring their best for that final period, brings some optimism for sure, I'm sure.
Well, you're down by three, and you're not on a winning team, so it's pretty easy to quit. And we extol our players not to because of what I've said earlier in the show. People are watching. Universities and colleges are still watching, and they're assessing people all the time. And for the girls, it's all universities and colleges, and from divisions 1, 2, and 3, NCAA and the ACHA league. And so we almost beg them not to quit on themselves. Don't quit on yourself. Just go play hard, and don't worry about and you know what? We won the third period, so good for us. And thanks again to Alex Mills for playing a good game, keeping it close, and making it a reasonable hockey game.
My computer tries to load, Gordy. They'll be back in action tonight, this Buffaloes team. And to your point, yeah, it's great to hear that what's been instilled is kind of translated on the ice at Pilot Mound in terms of not seeing this team quit. And then one would make the argument, especially maybe a St. Mary's Hockey Academy fan, that hey, we were up 3-0, we let our foot off the gas a bit, but hey, you got to play the game, and the Buffaloes played it to the very end, Gordy, and they'll be taking on the Rink Hockey Academy Winnipeg team tonight in their only matchup of this weekend. Another game in Pilot Mound. Yeah, I mean, we've talked about it so many times. This group, I'm sure, going to feed off of the energy that they can from the hometown crowd. More of an advantage to have the rink come here compared to going to Winnipeg, or is that even an advantage at all?
Well, it's always an advantage to, again, not to get on the bus and not to travel somewhere. I think the kids have a chance to kind of take a deep breath and go back to their own dorm, our beautiful facilities there, take a bit of a rest after school is over, and come back over the rink and get sort of settled in. There's a different, I guess, a different sort of pre-game warm up you have at home than you do on the road, just because of bus travel and timing and all those things. And so you get a little bit more of a relax, and hopefully that helps the kids prepare for the upcoming event. I'm going to add here, Graham, quite excited. Our recruiting program has been working really hard, and I'm pleased to say that we have sort of locked into a number of good, really, really good, solid girls coming out of some of the Western provinces. And I'm looking, to be quite honest with you, at a team next year that could be a 500 team in the league and whatnot. I think we've got some scouts. We've got scouts in doing this for the boys as well. We're not quite there yet I don't think, with the boys, but we're working hard on that. We got a great young guy out of Austria we think is going to come over here and dazzle folks. But in the meantime, the girls program, if I'm correct, and if our scouts are correct and the videos are correct, and we get them here in April and get a look at them, we're going to see a kind of a resurgence in our girls program that we had prior to COVID, and hopefully we can challenge sort of in that middle range rather than from the bottom up.
Bring back to the good old days, Gordie, where this female program ended up making it to a championship. And hey, there's chance to add to next year's team, and also a chance to bring back a good amount of returning players if the program chooses to do so, with 6 of the players graduating this season. Some good
Yep.
ones in there, but some good ones staying as well. For Rink Hockey Academy, Winnipeg, this is a team that's 12-9-1 this season. This Buffaloes team 0-10 in their past 10 games, but has been playing teams tight. Gordie, for them, the rest of the way, what's going to be the biggest mentality for this team? Having, of course, the players that are going to be playing in their last ever games in a Buffaloes jersey, and also some rookies. Knowing that there's been struggles and the adversity that this team has gone through all year long, what would you say is probably the biggest message to them moving forward as they end things off here in 2023, 2024?
Play with energy, just play with energy. Don't, it's just let it all go, and don't look back, look forward, blast away at the other teams, go get them, and show everybody how proud you are of yourself, your families, your team, and your teammates. That's important. That's all pride stuff, and pride carries a lot of weight, and helps players move forward, and gives the impression, gladly so, that you're going to play well for your next team that you go to.
Well, it's all about energy, I'd say, agreeing with Gordie, for this team moving forward. And we'll see if they can maintain and play with high level energy as this 2023-2024 season comes to an end soon for them, as well as all 3 teams in the Academy and teams in the CSSHL. Playoffs starting on the 4th of March. Gordie, can't wait. Thanks for coming on for another week and doing this. Always appreciated, and for keeping us all up to date with everything going on with the Buffaloes and what's coming up.
Thanks, Graham. Always look forward to it.
Always great having Gordie Tumilson joining the editions of the Buffaloes podcast, as he always does. And I had mentioned Carson Carroll's in his hat trick while talking to Gordie. I'd also mentioned it during the opening of this episode, and it was Aiden Jacobson and Carson Carroll's dueling it out with each other in RHA Winnipeg's 5-4 win over Carson Carroll's Buffaloes this past Wednesday. But there was no shortage of fireworks in this one, and it's time to show you all Carson Carroll's hat trick. It was a highlight tape made by the CSSHL on Instagram, so shout out to them for providing this footage. And Carson, number 2, can sure let it rip, that's for sure. Take a look at this. muted myself, just realized that I was talking about Carson Carroll's, and yeah, Gordie Tumilson was right. A devastating shot by him, and yeah, finding himself in the right position, his teammates having the awareness to do so, locating him. So, yeah, shout out to them, and shout out to Carson Carroll's on having a huge performance in Pilot Mound's loss to RHA Winnipeg. They'll have another shot at them coming up soon. I'll have a report on all of the most recent scores that have come in that me and Gordie didn't have a chance to talk about this afternoon, as well as some other stuff that's been going down around Pilot Mound, and showing you guys the standings from around the CSSHL as we keep marching our way on to the 2024 CSSHL playoffs. You're watching the Buffaloes podcast here on G Show Productions, brought to you by Make Cannon Fasteners and Tools, Terrico, and Goaltenders. More to come here, Buffaloes Nation, after this commercial break, or after this transition, as I should say. Welcome back to the Buffaloes podcast, brought to you by Make Cannon Fasteners and Tools, Terrico, and Goaltenders. We're going to throw it to Make Cannon Fasteners and Tools as the sponsor on screen for now. And yeah, taking a look at the games for the teams in the academy. Of course, the U15 squad starting off their weekend in Thunder Bay with 2 games played today, as we make our way over to the Pilot Mound Hockey Academy Twitter account. PM Buffaloes is where you can find them on here. And it's a great resource to check out the latest scores, as they usually post them here sooner than they do on their website. But yeah, back-to-back losses for them today, starting off with that morning loss to the Adena Hornets, losing by a score of 8-1, and then losing this afternoon to the Minnetonka Skippers team by a score of 8-3. They'll be back in action tomorrow at 8:30 Central Time AM, 9:30 a.m. Eastern Time, and then also playing later on in the evening against the Grand Rapids Thunderhawks at 5:30 p.m. Eastern Time. All games can be seen on Live Barn if you do have an account. As for the U17 team, of course, mentioned it, talked about it. Carson Carroll's lighting it up with a hat trick, but it wasn't enough for the Buffaloes in that Wednesday loss. Heartbreak on Valentine's Day for them. They'll be back in action coming up in 2 days' time, 12:45 p.m. Central Time. That game can be seen on Flow Sports. If you have an account, recommend tuning into that one. And for this matchup, this game hasn't been reported yet. You can either find the score later on PM Buffalo's X account or at gshow.ca. But yeah, a team where this Buffaloes squad stay competitive at points against RHA Winnipeg this season. So yeah, should have been a somewhat close matchup tonight, as Pilot Mound kept it close against St. Mary's Hockey Academy in that 3-1 loss they had in their past game. But yeah, this game, if you missed it, I'm sure you can watch the full one on Flow Sports. This game being played in Pilot Mound tonight. But yeah, in terms of the standings for the female U18s, they didn't play the top dog RHA team, but RHA Winnipeg, 5th place in the CSSHL female U18 prep standings with a record of 12-9 and 1-0-1 heading into tonight, compared to Pilot Mound's 2-21 1-0-1 record. The Buffaloes this season, though, even though they are last place, tied for that with Okanagan Hockey Academy with 2 games in hand on them, with a better goals for rating there in terms of the number, and I'd say, better goals against average there compared to Okanagan Hockey Academy's 171. Brooklyn Adams and Alex Mills have been solid in net for the Buffaloes U18 female team this season. As for the U17s, this squad has started the season in the top 10. They've come back down to earth, as we've talked about so many times here on the podcast throughout the season, but they're ranking 20th, 12-3-0-1-1, and this is a team that's been able to compete against teams that have been better than them this season. The RHA Winnipeg team, as we can see there, is ranked 10th place with a 19-7-0-0-0 record. 3 OT wins for them on the season. So the Buffaloes, they had a close game against them back on Wednesday, thanks to Carson Carroll's having a great performance. Sure, he's going to be on top of his game once again, and for this Buffaloes team, hey, work hard, and great things could potentially happen if you are up for it. If you can compete, you are able to do so with this RHA Winnipeg team. As for the U18 prep male standings, and of course no game shown for them for this upcoming weekend, but they are in last place, 5 games in hand on the Wenatchee Wild Hockey Academy team, and some potential ground to make up to maybe catch Notre Dame in the standings, as they're only 3 points ahead of them, and this Buffalo squad has 3 games in hand, although their results way worse than Notre Dame's this season, and you could argue worse, well, yeah, than Wenatchee Wild, but the Buffaloes in a good position to potentially move up in the standings still, and keep themselves out of out of last place, as they're currently ranked there in second last. But as for the U15 squad, they're 4-17-2. 62 goals, 445 goals against. This team being led by the 3 in front, most notably, and Forrest Carlson, Gavin Noseworthy, and Cole Landerville this season. As you can see there, 2 more games played than the team in front of them, as they're 1 point behind Delta Hockey Academy. But for this U15 squad, looking to bounce back. They're not in CSSHL action this weekend, by the way. They were last week, though, and had some success on their weekend there. So gonna keep checking back and showing you guys the updates in the standings as the season does come to an end. And once playoff hits, I'll have all the updates on what's happening over there and in Penticton, BC, as the playoffs are annually played in that city, in that province of BC, in the city of Penticton. But so we take a look at some other sports going on around Pilot Mound. It's not just hockey that these athletes focus on. They get to participate in other sports, which is fantastic. The Academy allowing the athlete to develop themselves in the most complete way possible by them doing this. And yeah, great that PMCI offers these types of sports for these athletes to continue to develop this way. But yeah, there were some players from the Academy that had a chance to travel to Glenboro to participate in a co-ed basketball tournament, the first ever one held. So you can see the images here of the coach talking to them, and yeah, awesome to see some young Buffaloes taking part in some sports activities outside of the arena, off of the ice, again to play some ball with each other, which is fantastic to see. But yeah, that's going to do it for this week's edition of the Academy Report. Everybody be sure to check in here next week on Friday night, as we'll have more of that for you all coming up. But yeah, we're going to throw it to one last transition, and I'll have some final words here on this edition of the Buffaloes podcast, brought to you by McKen Fasteners and Tools, Terrico, and Goaltenders. Goaltenders, your goalie's personal video review service. Be sure to check them out. Gordie Tumilson, goalies.ca. Well, you made it to the end of this edition of the Buffaloes podcast. My apologies, folks. You may think sometimes I may seem drunk with how I'm speaking tonight. I'm not, I can assure you. Totally sober. It's just got a bit of heartburn, a bit of indigestion. I think that's how the word goes, how the saying goes. But yeah, happy I was able to get through this one tonight. Hope you all enjoyed this edition of the Buffaloes podcast. It was brought to you by, of course, Goaltenders, check out their official website at Gordie Tumilson goalies.ca. Also, Terrico and Midcan Fasteners and Tools. Thank you to them for sponsoring another edition of Pilot Mound Hockey Academy's official podcast here on gshow.ca. If you did enjoy this edition of the Buffaloes podcast, be sure to subscribe here on our YouTube channel, as well as turn on notifications so you don't miss any future uploads. This podcast comes out every Friday night. New editions of this podcast does. Was thinking of switching it to 8 p.m. in terms of the showtime, but keeping it to 9 p.m. Decided that for the rest of this year. So 9 p.m. next week is when you can catch number 18 of episode 18 of the Buffaloes podcast. Should be a lot of fun. Gonna have a league report, or not league report, but an academy report and updates of really everything going on around the academy. Hoping to have player interviews for that episode next week as well. So be sure to check us out on social media. We'll have all the details in our promo post the day of for episode 18 of the Buffaloes podcast, as well as check us out on our website at gshow.ca. So we'll have the details in the schedule spot on our website, the upcoming events tab. So yeah, thank you to Gordie Tumilson, and of course his brand once again, first not only sponsoring this edition of the episode, but to Gordie for coming on and being the weekly guest. He'll be joining me again next week to talk about everything that went down for the teams that are playing in the academy. Be sure to check out PM Buffaloes on X, as well as Pilot Mound Hockey Academy.com to stay up to date with everything going on around the academy. And of course here on G Show Productions as well is where you can stay up to date with all things Pilot Mound Hockey Academy hockey as well. But it's about that time, folks, where it's the weekend. It's Friday night. I'm going to let you all go. I've been your host once again, Graham the G Show Forsyth, giving you the salute, peacing out, and waving goodbye on this Friday night. Have a wonderful and safe weekend, everybody. Enjoy the great hockey coming your way, Buffaloes Nation. And as always, we'll let Tyson Unruh let us out here, or walk us off on this edition of the Buffaloes podcast with his official theme song of this podcast, March of the Buffaloes. Good night, everybody. See you next Friday.